Hello, everyone, and welcome to Deep Dive Zone, a Sonic the Hedgehog reread podcast for fans of all shapes and sizes. I'm your host, Devin, joined as always by my comrades Lauren and Bruce. And guys, today we are finally descending into the shallow and deep at the same time pool of Archie Sonic the Hedgehog, the American Sonic comics.
I've been excited for this for the last almost 6 months we've been doing this? I don't know, how long have we been doing this?
No, it's about actually it's about 7 months, because I think we started in January.
Either January or February, I don't remember. Either way, for the last 6 or 7 months, this has been on my mind, oh god, we're gonna read Archie, and everything I've heard mostly from you, is just prepared me for this moment.
Yeah, I haven't read the comics for a while, but I remember through the Sonic archives, which aren't around anymore, darn, I read a lot of these comics, and I rather enjoyed them when I was younger, so I'm glad to have an excuse to read the rest of them, because I never bothered to after the archives ended.
Yeah, I grew up with some of the archives, but not all of them. The ones that we're starting with today, the original Sonic miniseries, I do have it sitting on my shelf right now. But I missed out on so many of them, and some of them I actually did read at Lauren's house, but this series is weird, and the fact that I would occasionally see a later Sonic comic and just be perplexed by the idea that they took place within the same continuity was fascinating to me. And so nowadays, you know, I'm a bona fide Archie fan with my own bitterness and opinions on things. But right now, we're just starting with, you know, simple days to start with Sonic the Hedgehog number 0 here.
Simple is definitely a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think the thing that always weirded me out about this comic specifically is that the cover has classic Eggman design on it and sort of classic Sonic design on it.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, that's my first observation as well.
They're coming out of a TV screen as Sonic runs on a Green Hill Zone bridge, but they also appear to have Green Hill Zone in the background.
Well, I
Yeah.
was talking about how the designs changed. Well, yeah, there are lots of weird covers that we will see. This is not that out there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah. Well, we're starting with Don't Cry For Me Mobius, written by Michael Gallagher and illustrated by Scott Shaw. When the Freedom Fighters are drawn out in the open by crying trees leaking water into the Knothole base, Robotnik takes this opportunity to launch an attack.
So, at the beginning of this, I find it funny that whoever wrote this decided, oh yeah, yes. We'll put the Freedom Fighters on the left, and then we'll name Buzz Bomber, Cluck, Crabmeat, and Caterkiller as characters that need to be introduced, they're going to be significant or something, but they're not at all.
Yeah, they didn't exactly have a rogues gallery of villains here, so they just gotta go with whatever badniks they can scrounge up.
Well, I mean, at least early on, Crabmeat's probably the most consistently appearing badnik.
That is true,
yeah,
but they put them on the opposite side of the Freedom Fighters. It doesn't work.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, we really have a small cast here. We only have Sonic, Tails, Rotor, Sally, and Antoine, and we only have Robotnik as the main villain. We don't have Snively. We somehow don't have Bunny right now.
That's true.
Yeah, but so we start out with, you know, Robotnik chasing Sonic in this very much more Adventures of Sonic sort of tone.
It's odd coming off of Sad AM, knowing that I know the comics and Sad AM share a lot. It's odd.
I was noticing okay, so we've got the same basic setup as Sad AM, but yeah, the tone.
I do wonder how much of it is the visual composition of it, and I say visual composition instead of art, because I generally like Scott Shaw's art here. I think he's expressive and also clean in how he draws the characters, but yeah. It's presented with many panels per page that are all kind of the same size and have, you know, the same sort of jokes throughout.
Well, to me, some of it also feels kind of sterile. It doesn't feel like these backgrounds, especially because a lot of the skies are just solid colors.
Yeah, I mean, you know, different things go into the production of American comics versus Japanese ones, but I definitely agree with you. They tend to be, you know, whatever backgrounds they draw tend to just be to get the job done. And sometimes not even that. Sometimes it's just solid white.
Yeah, this first panel on the sky's literally just white. It wasn't even, they didn't even bother to color it in.
Maybe there's a nuclear bomb going off behind them.
Right, totally.
But yeah, so we get Sonic fighting Robotnik. We get like introduced to Caterkiller as a badnik, and then within 2 pages he's just dead because
Yeah.
Sonic gets Robotnik to shoot him
Mm-hmm.
with a Sonic spin, which is apparently different than just jumping. It's apparently a special move somehow.
Well, when you announce it, it becomes a special move.
That's right. Everything's a special move if you announce it.
I suppose.
That works in real life too, folks.
We get all that. We get Sonic going back to Knothole. We get the same Great Oak Slide, but Knothole is actually an underground base in this series rather than a hidden village. And I guess there's even less people here than in Sat AM?
For the
Seems
moment.
like it. Yeah, at the moment at least.
Yeah.
Also, not all being underground kind of makes more sense than it just being a hidden village.
Yeah, I guess they maybe had like a canopy of trees in the show, but it was never really clear.
Yeah, well, that makes sense for a show because there's not a whole lot they can go into like minute details that only weirdos like us would care about.
Yeah.
Speaking of weird details, Sally shows up among the Freedom Fighters, but her coloration is completely different.
Yeah, so we have our third color palette for Sally that we've seen so far, because we saw the pink one in Adventures of Sonic, and that'll show up later in this series, but now we've got this, like, red and yellow design.
Yeah, she's blonde for some reason, but she's only blonde for like one issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what exactly was happening on production, but they changed that relatively fast.
I read
you're
somewhere what it was, but I can't remember.
You're gonna love the explanation that they come up with later for this design. But yeah, it's literally just we get introduced to the rest of the Freedom Fighters. They're mostly the same as they are in the show. The thing that I will note is that it seems like Rotor is more dry and sarcastic in these comics than in the show.
I don't know.
I
A
don't
lot
know,
of the Freedom Fighters, to me, at least this early on, other than Sonic and Sally and maybe Tails, I guess that's like half of the Freedom Fighters. The other Freedom Fighters, they don't really feel super characterized. They just kind of feel like background characters that were suddenly promoted to main characters.
Yeah, you're
So-
probably right.
So back to topic of Sally. Another thing I observed was so in the show, Sonic and Sally are like super open about whatever odd relationship they have going on. But
Right.
in this comic, they have a much more cartoonish, like, oh, somehow neither of them realize that both of them realize, and they never will.
Yeah, they really like their ship teasing, and it's
They have a very will they won't they relationship, it seems like.
and well, Antron is mostly just introduced here with Sonic making fun of him. This is going to be the big thing, is that me and Lauren had this slight disagreement over Antoine's treatment in Sat AM, where, you know, he was routinely dunked on, but also was kind of just a liability to the Freedom Fighters. In the comics, I am fully on Lauren's side. Antoine is abused a lot, and he does way less things wrong in the comics.
Yeah, I have a note later. I was surprised how early on he's actually shown to be not a liability, but he can be useful.
Actually be competent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our next scene takes us to Robotropolis, kind of, because we don't really have Robotnik's base from the show in these comics just yet, so we just have Robotnik in kind of like an office, and he has a desk that has like 2 different signs to list all of the horrible nouns that they've attached to him.
I love all of his titles. I love the fact that he calls himself a megalomaniac.
Yeah, the more silly comics version of Robotnik is just a joy. It's like not quite as over the edge as Adventures of Sonic Robotnik, but an interesting in between.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
My favorite is Insurance Salesman.
Oh yeah, that's a good one also. The worst one, you know.
Yeah. I don't know, Puppy Kicker is up there.
That one's also pretty high up there.
And while we're on this frame, I have to point out I love how the comics has this trend. I don't know how long it goes on, but quite a while, I think, where when it starts another part of a comic, then one of the characters usually has to say Sonic the Hedgehog in the logo format to introduce it in one of their whatever they're saying is great.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes on as long as they start considering separate scenes to be entire different stories, kind of. Because this scene starts with the Don't Cry for Me Mobius Part 2, which is weird because this was never sold as different comics. It's like, did you... Did they expect you to forget what story you were reading?
Children have very short-term memory.
I suppose. I certainly did.
I mean, yeah, I still do.
Well, in any case, so yeah, they discovered the leak in the base, and now they're up here to figure out what's going on. We get Antoine Abuse number 2. I've actually been numbering these. I'm probably going to miss some, but we get Antoine Abuse number 2 with Sonic just casually letting Antoine walk into a lake for no reason.
Yeah, Sonic's kind of a jerk.
Oh, certainly. And yeah, it turns out to be crying trees, weeping willow they call them, that's already a real tree, but you know.
To be fair, the term weeping willow is used on a lot of like crying trees in fantasy, so
I suppose. They just kind of mess around there and say, we gotta figure out what's up with this. And then Robotnik just shows up. I wrote in the summary that he uses it as an opportunity to attack, and that's sort of true, but he doesn't really plan anything out. He just kind of does what he always does.
it just appears.
But he does have the Wrecking Ball mech, so that's already one thing more from the games than the shows had.
That was kind of cool to see.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, Eggman attacks, and Sonic runs over to a well where I guess he hid a power ring, which... don't ask me about ring mechanics, because those were annoying enough to decipher in SAT AM, which didn't feel consistent. In this, they just do whatever, they're even more plot devices, I would say. Because Sonic's use of the ring here is that he jumps through it, and that somehow causes Robotnik to attack himself?
Yeah, that's not very well defined there.
Yeah, no, I don't know what's going on with that. It does lead to a piece of visual imagery I like a lot, though, which is Robotnik just barely clinging to one buzz bomber flying back to Robotropolis.
It's a good thing that's a fucking robot.
Oh yeah, because he's holding it by the stinger, isn't he?
Yeah, well that, and also, I don't think any real creature could carry Robotnik like that.
Probably not. So yeah, we end with just Sonic and the gang planting more trees, because the trees were sad that there was trees being taken away, so they plant more to stop them from leaking into the base.
Yay!
Yeah, so first story, I'm gonna say it doesn't really leave a wonderful first impression. I mean, it's fine. It's kind of silly and has a couple good jokes, I guess.
I honestly didn't think about it too hard at all. There's
nothing to really think about in it.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious this isn't starting out trying to be anything with lots of depth, despite a similar origin with SAT AM.
Yeah, no kidding, especially since the between this story and the next one, we've got 3 even pages of just kind of silly, whatever stuff.
Yeah.
We get just splash pages of some badniks and Sonic and Sally looking at a tree stump and Sonic's 7 speeds that's not a mechanic. It does have Transonic, so Transonic rights, everybody, but
wait, it does?
Yeah, Speed 4 is Transonic.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, so that Sonic Speeds page reminds me of a point, which is, you can see this sometimes in other Sonic media, but I think in the comics it's even more prevalent. So his fastest speed is faster, or maybe it's the second fastest, I don't remember. Either way, it's faster than the speed of light, it says, which is absolutely absurd, but
yeah.
It reveals that in the comics, Sonic tends to just be as fast as he needs to be at random times. There's no real consistency with that.
Oh, there is no power cap at all on this guy. One of my favorite things is that if you look at power scaling wikis at the comic versions of any Sonic character, you'll see that they're all listed as reality destroying gods because of how many silly cartoon physics are listed as legitimate parts of their repertoire.
Such as the power of Toon Force.
Right.
The only other thing between these two stories is that the Robotnik Badniks page lists Splats the Bunny, who is not actually in Sonic 1. That was a cut Badnik.
Also, Robotnik has normal eyes on this page.
Oh yeah, he does. That's weird. That must be a coloring mistake.
I assume so, but that is creepy as hell.
Anyway, so that leads into the second story of the issue, which is called Oh No Robo No Mo Mobo, which is a great showcasing of the kind of writing we're going to be getting for the first few issues. Still Gallagher and Scott Shaw, but we get Uncle Chuck at least.
Oh, heck yeah.
You're goddamn right we do. Also, the chili... First of all, he runs a chili dog stand for some reason.
Yes.
I'd also like to point out that the hot dog he's putting chili on is purple.
Yes, it is. I don't know what's up with that.
Odd.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I forgot to read the actual summary. Oh. It just says Sonic recounts the story of Robotnik's takeover of Mobius.
Yeah, so on that note, it's interesting that the comics waste no time. They don't go into extreme depth, but they do give a basic backstory as literally story 2.
Yeah, and I think that it's a little deceptive, because I was saying that the timeline placement of this one is weird, but I think it's actually not totally inconsistent, because I think what this is technically after Robotnik's coup, but before he has taken over most of Mobius.
Before he's consolidated his power.
I kind of had the assumption that this does not fit, and they simply retconned it later. But if you think about it, that does work too.
Well, it doesn't fit, and they did retcon it later, because the more important thing is that, we have the scene of, Robotnik taking over. He kidnaps Chuck and Mutsky while Sonic's out delivering chili dogs, which I will say Delivery Boy makes sense as a job for Sonic, but
definitely.
But the thing that really doesn't work is that after Sonic gets to Robotropolis and realizes it's dangerous and realizes Chuck has been kidnapped, he, is hiding out in the bushes or whatever and meets Sally for the first time there, which is definitely not consistent. Sonic and Sally were definitely kids together in every version of this story.
So I guess what you could say parts of it have been retconned.
Yeah, well, because other parts of this story are still canon, so...
Right. Well, and something long-running, don't be surprised to see retcons.
Yeah, so this story very much gave the impression that Robotnik was barging in and sort of taking over now, with the exception of Sally, because Sonic doesn't seem to know Robotnik yet. Interestingly, though, Chuck does, which makes me wonder what was the idea of his role at this time?
I have a feeling there wasn't much of a major idea behind Chuck's role other than just being Sonic's uncle.
At this time, there wasn't. There is an explanation for why Chuck is running a chili dog stand instead of working for the kingdom, though.
Okay.
Okay.
Of
This
course
is
there is.
hilarious that they're covering for all of this later. I look forward to seeing that.
Oh, they bend the continuity backwards to make things work in some cases. But yeah, other than that, it's sort of like, I'll tell you what it feels like almost. It feels like the story that your parents would tell you, like the fairy tale, and then the real story that we know is the dark reality of the situation.
Ooh, yeah.
That is a perfect way to put it.
That's a good way of putting it.
Complete with not even having real roboticization. They're just hypnotized.
Okay, yes, I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, that's one of my other notes as well.
That is so odd. It's called roboticization, but they're not actually roboticized, and I'm assuming that's just... I don't know.
I don't know,
anyway.
it's like, I want to say early installment weirdness, but they had to have agreed, because these comics were made around the same time as SatAM. I think this one may have come out actually before SatAM started by like a week. But obviously they had a lot of their world and characters figured out, so...
And they must have communicated in some way, or SatAM wouldn't have the connections that it does.
Yeah, so when you have the robot guy who turns people into robots, how do you interpret that as he hypnotizes them?
Right.
Well, we'll get a something of an idea as we continue here into Sonic the Hedgehog #1.
Hey, wait a second.
Oh,
we
sorry,
can't quite go there yet. There's one very important note, because this will come back later. Sonic mentions their middle name is Maurice.
Oh, yes, Maurice.
Oh yes,
boy.
he does. There's nothing wrong with it right now. It's just a harmless joke right now.
It's just strange that he needs more of a name than just Sonic the Hedgehog to me. Like, why?
Well, it's just, a silly little Michael Gallagher haha funny moment right now.
It's a joke right now, I know. but like I know later on it's brought up again, and it's like it's retained continuity, and it just bothers me that he needs a name besides just Sonic the Hedgehog.
Well,
Well,
and we
he's
end
the
off
villain.
on one other, I'm gonna call it a bad omen, which is that Sonic holds up a big letter and says, "Hey kids, write in what kind of stories you want to see."
Oh no! Can we blame the readers for the weirdness?
Maybe some of it. There's certainly
Oh
things, there's certainly
no!
stories that end with them saying, "Write us if you want to see more of this," and then they made more of this. Whether that's because fans
Oh,
wanted it, who knows, but
oh no! All
Hmm.
right, all right.
there's certainly not things that we're gonna want. Anyway,
So I'm very tempted to send a letter to this address and see if anything happens.
well, I'm not gonna stop you. I am, however, going to talk about Sonic the Hedgehog #1, our next comic here. So we start off with Run, Sally, Run. Same team as usual, Michael Gallagher, Scott Shaw. So when Sonic learns that Sally is secretly meeting Robotnik to negotiate the release of the king, he races to save her from being roboticized, with Tails and Antoine in tow. Sally's got her correct colorization now, and by correct I mean not quite correct.
Yeah, but she's got black hair now.
So yeah, as you mentioned in the summary, Sally is speaking with like a buzz bomber, which let me just say, for some reason they say I'm supposed to be meeting buzz bomber, not like as if it's a proper name or something instead of just a buzz bomber, even though there are multiple buzz bombers. I'm not sure if that's just weird grammar and I'm looking into too deep.
Yeah.
But it popped out. The other thing that I noticed was that somehow Sally is agile and fast enough to grab Sonic outside of a spinball and stop them without getting hurt, which is kind of insane.
Well, and she's like very kind of agitated for the start of this, and it's a tense situation, obviously, but with how it ends up turning out, I don't know. But yeah, we get this whole shtick where Sonic runs up and it's like, "Hey Sally, what are you doing?" It's like, "No, I'm gonna do this thing with Robotnik." And it's like, "No, that's so stupid." It's like, "Well, shut up. I'm gonna do it anyway." And then Sonic, Tails, and Antoine are like, "All right, we're gonna get her." And then immediately, it's like there's not even a fake negotiation scene with Sally and Robotnik. It's just she gets here and he's like, "All right, roboticize her."
Yep, that's sort of the Robotnik we're dealing with at the moment. He cuts straight to the "yes, I am evil, ha ha ha," and I will be gleeful about it.
You know what? I can't blame him. It's a lot more entertaining than like just going around or then basically just capturing and throwing her in prison. It's a lot more entertaining to just say, "All right, I've got you. Fuck you. You're being a robot now."
And I say roboticizer, but it's actually the Robo Machine, assembled in Mexico.
Yep, assembled in Mexico. I'm sorry, what?
It's like
Again, I assume it's just a joke.
it's a really weird joke, though.
It is. I don't understand it, but I think it's safe to say it's just a joke.
Yeah.
Unless Mexico is canon in the Sonic universe.
You know, I'm not gonna have this discussion right now. We'll get to it.
Oh God. Okay.
So, so Sonic, Tails, and Antoine, they bust in there, and well, Sonic does all the work. This is going to be a recurring thing. Is other characters standing around talking while Sonic does most of the actual fighting.
I mean, he is the big boy.
Yeah.
Okay,
but
I would like to point out, because he is my boy, Antoine somehow manages to pickpocket Robotnik and steal their gun, which is like the coolest thing I've seen him do ever.
yeah, that is automatically the coolest thing that Antoine has done in this franchise so far.
Honestly, that is pretty cool.
I wish it mattered. So Sonic destroys the Robo Machine. It's not a roboticizer, apparently, and they all leave Robotropolis with Sonic pulling them in a wagon. And Sally
honestly,
is
pulling in the wagon makes more sense than what they usually do, just like holding on to Sonic.
yeah, just
True.
like daisy chain their hands.
Yeah, no, pulling them in the wagon makes a lot more sense.
But they get back to the base, and Sally is very angry, and they're like, "Why? What the hell's going on?" And she's like, "No, me and Rotor developed a special boot to scan the inside of the roboticizer so that we could get details on it and figure out how to reverse its effects." And so she huffs off and is angry and is like, you ruined everything. Do we see the
And
problem here?
Oh, I
Um,
think it's obvious.
how the fuck were they supposed to know?
There
Why
you
didn't
go.
you tell them?
Yes, just fucking tell. Well, I assume because Sally probably wouldn't trust Sonic to let her go on her own. But
they
that's still
don't say
dumb.
that.
No, they don't say that. I'm just guessing. But
Yeah,
like, it's
that's the most charitable
so
interpretation.
stupid. It's so stupid.
It really is.
I don't know. It kind of makes the whole story seem backwards and almost mean-spirited. I don't even know if that's the right word for it.
Well, it puts Sally off as like A, not trusting her fellow freedom fighters, and B, coming off as kind of an ass.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And I feel like Sad AM also had some of those issues where Sally just wouldn't explain something and then go off on Sonic.
Yeah, it's gonna be worse in these comics than ever it was in Sad AM.
I mean, I assume that just because the comics are a lot fucking bigger.
Yeah. So after that, we move on to Something Fishy. Gallagher and Shaw, as usual. When Sonic is cornered underwater by a Jaws badnik, Tails and Rotor rush to save him in a submarine. We start off with Big's fishing minigame, apparently.
Oh, heck yeah.
The best part of any Sonic game.
That's the truth.
Preview of Sonic Frontiers, everybody.
That's all it is. The Sonic Frontiers is actually just a fishing game.
Yeah, but I don't know. It seems weird that they would have Sonic fish at all. That doesn't really seem in line with his personality. But then I don't
he
think
does seem like someone who likes to, sometimes, take a step back and relax.
He
I suppose.
appreciates nature.
He definitely appreciates nature. That's definitely true.
Well, it's not like most of the creative team at this time played any of the games anyway. So
I doubt they even knew who Sonic was, other than that he's a blue hedgehog.
Yeah. I think what Michael Gallagher was best known for writing before these was Marvel's Alf comics.
Marvel did Alf comics?
Yes.
So,
anyway, about this actual story.
Yeah, it's interesting that when Sonic gets pulled underwater, that you can clearly see there are like slides from Labyrinth Zone. So they thought about that. But then at the same time, for some reason, they're like, oh, we played the game or we saw the game, but we didn't actually understand anything because Sonic can talk underwater and swim with ease.
Yeah, Jaws kidnaps Sonic and takes him to the waterproof robot maker. It's not a robo machine, it's not a roboticizer, it's a robot maker.
Why do we need so many robot things?
This was the Wild West of writing.
Fair.
You see, the robo machine hypnotizes you, but the robot maker actually turns you into robots.
Yes, of course. Using your brain.
There's a clear difference.
That's as good a distinction as any. So anyway, Sonic gets out of the net that Jaws has him in to, he just spin dashes out of it, but that somehow uses up all of his breath, which he is somehow holding while also talking.
It's not that he like has breath held. It's like hedgehogs can store large amounts of oxygen, and he just ran out.
Okay.
As much sense as anything.
He emptied his reserve tank.
Exactly.
Emptied his.
Yeah, but Sonic almost dies. Tails and Rotor save him by shooting him with something? I guess a torpedo, but it doesn't really look like anything. It just kind of looks like an explosion. Yeah. Okay, Sonic says it's a torpedo. But he eats the bubbles from it just like in the games.
Yeah.
And destroys the machine, and that's it.
Yeah.
The level of mechanical prowess that the Freedom Fighters possess seems very variable in this series so far.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It's another case of there's not a ton of substance to this story. We got some Badnik, we got some Sonic 1 imagery.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Again, it's not really trying to be anything grand, so it's fine. It was very fun when I was younger and I read it, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's the impression that for a lot of these is like, yeah, it's okay for kids. That's all right. Which, maybe means that I should be running through these faster, I don't know.
No, but
Let's.
everything this is setting up will be extremely important when it really does start to get in depth.
The
All
thing
the
is,
groundwork is
you're
being
not really
laid.
wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah. So moving on, I think to Sonic the Hedgehog #2. We have our first issue where the entire issue is taken up by just one story with a crowning achievement by the usual guys. When the 4 Freedom Emeralds from King Acorn's crown are stolen, Sally sends Sonic on a quest to recover them, running into Antoine and Tails along the way. And we start off with some weird stuff. We have Sally in a throne room, apparently, calling from like a weird like window in the cave. Then Sonic fails his physics test by somehow claiming that by moving at twice the speed of sound, I can arrive before the words Sonic the Hedgehog leave her lips. That is not how anything works.
Yeah, also, doesn't that put Sonic running at like 1,400 miles per hour?
Well, it doesn't make sense
Amazing.
regardless, because you can see that she's
Well,
already called Sonic, which means that he ran so fast that he traveled back in time to before she called him.
damn, did he
Faster
like.
than the speed of light, like I said.
Yeah. Universe Buster.
Damn, yeah.
Sonic does make a joke here about Sally's hair color changing.
Yeah, I do like that he pointed that out. That was kind of funny.
And it shows that they remember what happened in prior issues. It all has continuity.
Oh.
Except for these 4 Freedom Emeralds, which have a vague magic that we never hear what it does and never show up again.
Yeah, I feel like we should keep a running counter of how many emeralds we see, or how many different kinds of emeralds, because I have a feeling it's going to be more than just these and the Chaos Emeralds.
I'm gonna
Actually,
amend Emerald to Magic Rock, but yes.
Okay, fair enough.
You know, I'm actually mildly surprised the Freedom Emeralds don't show up again in issue like 141 or something.
Well, it's because this is King Acorn's crown, and there's already a different, completely unrelated story about that overwrites it.
Oh my god.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Anyway, so they kind of, it's like the fact that I guess just that there's 4 of them kind of brought the Adventures of Sonic Chaos Emeralds to mind, but those at least had defined powers. These are just special because we say so.
That's all we need to know.
I suppose.
That's all us plebes need to know.
Yes, only royalty can know all the secrets.
Of course.
It's interesting that you related it to Adventures of Sonic, though, because it is similar in the regard that suddenly they're like, okay, let's make a grand spanning story across the entire issue, hunting for these emeralds. They're trying to do something a little bigger than what they did in the other stories.
And we get that supplemented by this kind of bizarre scene here with Antoine and his apparent royal guard.
Yeah, some more freedom fighters.
Yeah,
I guess,
like,
but it's really
none
weird.
Of them are very important.
Well, it's just weird because Antoine is a teenager. The fact that he never got to be in the Royal Guard is a facet of his character. He's untrained. That's why he's a bit of a coward. But here he's commanding a bunch of other guys who I don't know how old they are. And frankly, I'm sure the writers didn't know how old Antoine was supposed to be at this point.
Fair.
But they suspect that there's a spy here to steal the emeralds, which has already happened by the point that they figure out who it is. It turns out it was the pig guy who he gets water on him, and that turns him purple, and he turns on his own self-destruct. Anyway, the end of this weird scene is with Sonic picking this guy up who's turned into a bomb and running with him through a door or just out of there, and then we see it explode, and it says end of part 1, and I guess that's our first Sonic death fake out of the series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is so little time between the supposed death and Sonic coming back that it's like, it feels like nothing.
So, since we just blew up the pig robot, let me bring to your attention the fact that they literally acknowledge that, because there's a robot in Knothole, Robotnik will know the location, but he doesn't. How does that work when they stole the emeralds? How does he not know where Knothole is?
That's a good question.
The
Right.
problem is it
Oh, no.
successfully passed off the emeralds, meaning it must have either left itself or passed them on to a different badnik, which it then should have relayed the information to. If it didn't, I guess that's probably what happened, but that's stupid.
Maybe
don't know.
we're also trying to give these comics too much credit.
I'm just saying, they pointed
Well-
out and it doesn't make any sense how...
Oh yeah,
it
no, I
wasn't.
agree. It's dumb, but we
It's
might
just
be
like
giving
we
this.
said, we've gotten deep in the weeds already.
Yeah, we might be
Good.
giving this shit too much credit. Yeah, I'm kind of glad that we're already trying to figure this shit out.
It's gonna be so much fun. I'm so excited. Anyway, so the rest of this issue is, of course, Sonic has to recover the Freedom Emeralds, and so we basically get 3
Adventure.
different sequences of that. So we get this first one where, you know, Sonic and Antoine have to go up in like a hot air balloon.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
let me just say that Robotnik's blimp with the giant mustache is absolutely incredible.
It's so on point for him.
It's perfect. Their hot air balloon gets popped. Antoine thankfully has a parachute, but Sonic does something really great, and he predicts the level design of 3D Sonic games and just homing attack chains off of the flying robots to get onto the blimp.
It's so true.
The writers were ahead of their time.
Yeah. And yeah, they get that's how they get the first Freedom Emerald. Just one of the SWAT bots was just holding it, I guess.
Yep.
Speaking of which, so we move on to the next scene where now Tails is out fishing, and Sonic, I guess, just gets his leg caught in the fishing line or something and doesn't even notice, and just drags Tails underwater, where the chopper badnik from before is still down there.
I mean,
Yeah.
they didn't feel any need to kill it, so you know.
So I'm actually really surprised. Again, continuity. This one,
Yeah.
even more than before, because it's literally just a location that we were at last issue. We're there again, and again, the same chopper banner, like you pointed out.
Apparently he was preparing for this scheme, though, because he has a pillar underwater with like lights shining down on it to put the emerald on.
Mm-hmm.
And unlike last issue, they don't need anything so complicated as a Bathos Submarinosphere to beat him. Instead, he just kind of runs at them, and Tails draws a picture on a wall underwater with a quote-unquote waterproof marker that is green, even though his drawing is in color.
No, Devin, it's one of those color-changing pens. Not color-changing, but like... No, you remember those like tricolor pens, or the ones that had a buttload of colors on them?
Yeah, but you can see it. It doesn't have the thing, because you try to push all those down at once because it's got the switches on them.
Look, we have to explain this some way.
Okay, well then I have a challenge for you, Bruce.
Oh boy.
The marker coloration is the easy part. What about the joke where Jaws is like, "Oh, I should have realized they only had 4 fingers." So, and then that got me thinking, like, wait, what? And yeah, sure enough, in this issue, the characters have 5 fingers.
Oh yeah, they do.
Interestingly, in the first 2 issues, everyone does have 4 fingers.
They all grew extra fingers in between issues.
What?
Well, and this is funny because I was just watching that Hazel video. Shoutouts to Hazel again, where she talks about Sonic Underground, and she mentions that in Sonic Underground the characters all have 5 fingers, whereas in previous Sonic shows they all had 4 because Sega stepped in during the production of Underground to say you can't have characters with only 4 fingers because the Yakuza cut people's fingers off sometimes.
Oh my god, that's great. I
is
love that.
insane.
That's hilarious.
The number of fingers on people's hands is going to be a weirdly relevant plot point throughout these comics.
Oh my god. Is there Yakuza in the comics?
I don't think so. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure there isn't.
No.
Oh my god, that's
We're gonna have
great.
we're gonna have to wait till next issue to see if they're drawn with 4 fingers after this story. But
We don't have that much longer to wait because this issue
No,
doesn't have much left in it.
no, the last scene, which starts with Sonic with a miscolored blue arm, the last scene is basically just Sonic, tries to get the emerald from a SWAT bot, but it's actually a trap, and he ends up underground, attacked by Burrobots.
Unfortunately, he doesn't start singing.
You know what he does do, though? We were just talking about cutting off fingers. Sonic is like, "Whoa, he cut off my path," and then Perlbot responds with, "And now I'll cut your limbs off," which is surprisingly intense for this comic.
Yeah.
Now I'll cut your limbs off. That is pretty intense.
But that doesn't happen. Sonic just runs him in a circle and then he's done.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
And yeah,
We
he's
can't
got the
see
last.
Sonic getting brutalized.
Not right now, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe later.
Oh no.
But yeah, Sonic's grand idea to get out of all this is to just burrow up through the ground and somehow comes out right in the middle of like their family room or whatever, or Boomer's shop. Okay, we got to talk about Rotor and his name. They
Okay,
call him
yes.
Boomer sometimes.
Well, yeah, what the fuck's going on with that?
Okay, so apparently Rotor was originally going to be named Boomer because they were going to have a joke where, despite being named that, he has a really squeaky voice. But then when they cast him in Sad AM, the guy they cast just has a pretty normal voice, so they just decided to change it.
So they were gonna make a goddamn Boomer joke.
Well, I mean, not like a modern Boomer joke, but...
No, I know.
Yeah, Rotor is a better name anyway, and I'm glad they didn't do that joke,
yeah.
because it would have gotten annoying really fast.
Rotor is definitely a better name.
But yeah, they've got all 4 Freedom Emeralds back. Sally puts on the crown, and she says, "We'll use this magic to defeat Robotnik," and then that never happens.
Yep.
Sounds about right.
And
Sorry.
fittingly, that is cut off by Robotnik himself. The last page is just Robotnik complaining about not having enough screen time.
Yes, I love that. Again, it's just cartoonish Robotnik. It's great.
It really is great. Anytime Robotnik is just being himself, it's just fun.
And that's the end of the issue.
Yeah.
So it's nothing super grand, but it's interesting to see them do a full issue.
Right. It was a little more interesting.
Yeah, they did something a little more in-depth, a little bit of a quest, if you say.
Yeah, it was
Exactly.
fun.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, it is very funny that Robotnik's final line in the issue is, "Prepare yourself. Next issue, Dr. Robotnik will be taking no prisoners." And then the next issue is set in a completely hypothetical alternate reality.
Mm-hmm.
Which is to say, issue 3 is really, really weird, because it starts with Sonic Flashback, or what if Sonic and Robotnik were kids together?
Yeah.
That's a weird idea.
So this is our introduction to a couple things. One, it's our introduction to Dave Monick as an artist who is a lot messier than Scott Shaw was.
Yeah, the art here is a little more lumpy.
It's like a zany kind of a newspaper comic feel.
Yeah, well, so a lot of these early comics kind of have that newspaper comic feel, but
I know that Michael Gallagher is related to the guy who made Heathcliff, so that might be part of it.
yeah, you mentioned that. You mentioned that
Heathcliff?
previously.
I don't know how you say
Yeah,
it.
it's Heathcliff.
Okay.
But yeah, it's but yeah, I think the best word I can use to describe the art in this comic is lumpy.
A little bit.
I don't know why, but that just makes sense in my brain.
Well, it's gonna make more sense than anything else in this comic, because what
That's
is
true.
this? Sonic and Eggman as kids together? Okay, one, Sonic is already, underage, and he doesn't even appear any younger here. And two, what is this Robotnik?
Well, so also it doesn't make so this miniseries I assume exists to like a pilot, basically.
Yeah, it's a pilot, yeah.
To gauge interest. But I think the problem I have with this comic is that there's no reason to do like an alternate universe in this miniseries, because all it does is just take away from any interest.
Well, and it's with characters that you've barely been introduced to if you're just starting the series.
Exactly. Like, imagine someone picking this up and being like, okay, yeah, I get this, and then suddenly it's like they go read other comics and it's like, wait, what I read had nothing to do with anything.
Well, what's funny is, yes, this is a what if. It doesn't really matter. However, strangely, it is the first mention in the comics of Chuck creating the power rings, which he did.
That is true, even though it's an alternate universe mentioning it.
Yeah.
Or it's not even an alternate universe. I think it's actually like...
It's a dream.
So yeah, Sonic's just dreaming it.
Well, and here's the thing, is that this is the first of many stories that don't actually happen, so...
Nice.
I will say, Kid Robotnik... His design is just Robotnik, but a little shorter and without the mustache.
Right.
I feel like I would have preferred him looking like his kid from Adventures.
Something like that, or at least not having the robot arm.
Yeah, that's really just out there.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
again,
well,
they weren't thinking that hard.
it's a dream, remember? And so, honestly, I
Sure.
could see Sonic dreaming
Yeah,
that.
in the
That's
context
fair,
of it
that's
being a
fair. If we
dream,
interpret this
that
through
actually makes
Sonic's
sense.
mentality, that's probably the most interesting way to look at this story is this, some expression of how Sonic views Robotnik and Chuck? Because at the start, Sonic and Robotnik both claim that Chuck was responsible for Robotnik's origin. And in a way, that is true because he did build the roboticizer. The problem is that
Yeah.
Sonic doesn't really know that at this point, I don't think.
Yeah, I think probably that's true. I don't remember for sure how the comics does it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing what I can.
That's actually really interesting. I appreciate it.
That is an interesting point.
This comic's interpretation of that, though, is that Robotnik stole the brakes to Chuck's tractor, and Chuck accidentally crashed it into him.
Yeah, Robotnik was basically trying to commit life insurance scams.
So really what happened here is that Chuck almost saved the world, but Robotnik survived.
Damn.
Yeah. So there's this really funny bit where Robotnik makes some like tiny wind-up robots, right? And most of them get destroyed, but there's this one that if you look survives and like shows like genuine concern for Robotnik when they're
in the
injured
emergency
and
room.
follows them, to the emergency room, and is just like the most loyal, precious little thing you've ever seen. But then it tattles on him and he destroys it in cold blood, and I'm like, how dare you? What have you done? My little boy is gone.
Sad. First on-screen death in the comics.
Honestly, heart-wrenching.
Also, what are the like metal things on the sides of Robotnik's head?
I don't know. I mean, I guess they're what he has instead of ears, but I never understood what the deal with them was.
Frankenstein-esque.
Yeah, it's best description.
They're like Frankenstein's like neck bolts is what I think of them as.
Yeah, I don't think Frankenstein's neck bolts are ever explained either.
Yeah, but Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's monster, that is to say, is a monstrosity that should not be. So,
to be fair, that's only in the movies. Technically, in the book, he's actually fucking gorgeous.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's a big thing that Victor used the best specimens he could find, and he's gorgeous.
Oh,
but
weird.
Everyone's scared of him because he has glowing yellow eyes because he's undead or something like that.
Wow.
Oh, that's cool. That's like merging him with vampires.
It is pretty cool, honestly.
I did not know that. That is.
To be fair, I've never actually read it, but I watched a synopsis.
Well, Robotnik should have taken some cues from Victor Frankenstein then, because his Frankenstein's monster is made out of a washing machine, a vacuum cleaner, and a microwave.
Yeah.
Hey, Robotnik's just using what he has access to.
Yeah, he builds this just to attack Chuck in revenge for the injury that he himself brought upon himself.
Like you do.
No, that seems in character for Robotnik, honestly.
It does.
No, that makes sense. Sonic ties it up with a hose, and that's where the flashback that's not a real flashback ends, and we get this stupid signpost that says, "Would you like to see more imaginary Sonic stories? Write to Sonicgrams." Which kids wrote in? I hate these kids.
You list of every child that wrote into that.
I want their addresses.
Oh no.
Hey, they're adults by now. It's fine.
That's true.
Half true. They're adults by now. It's not fine.
That's fine.
Yeah.
They don't.
Well,
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, moving on to our final story of the night. Why Ask Spy? Gallagher and Monarch. Using a robot disguise made by Rotor, Sonic infiltrates Robotropolis as a spy, only for Robotnik to order him to destroy Knothole with a guided missile.
A whole ass, guided missile. It's
fun.
Yeah.
Very.
We have a very, kind of a weird scene establishing that they've got this robot disguise, and it's like, it would make a little more sense if we had, seen this as, Chuck's robo-face before, but we don't. Because it's like, why would you assume that that's what a roboticized person looks like? But that's...
Well, as far as everyone's concerned, the roboticized people look exactly the same, it seems like.
Yeah.
So, weird thing, is this disguise actually covers both bases, as if the writers were aware that there wasn't a consistency yet, because you've got the swirly eyes, but you've also got the metal jaw, so they're playing both the hypnotism and the actual robot side, which is odd.
I suppose.
I guess. Makes
I
most sense
shouldn't
out of
think too
anything.
hard about the visuals of it, because this story already makes a mistake that I can't get over, which is a lot of artists make this mistake where they draw Tails wearing Sonic's shoes.
Oh, yeah. Also, why is the first thing Sonic the Sally did was go fuck with Tails?
Yeah, Tails is
really
just a little
asshole
boy. You
thing.
can't go around terrorizing him.
Yeah, Tails would fucking... You're gonna give the poor kid like an aneurysm.
He's just trying to sell his newspapers.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah,
Like, what the hell?
Yeah, Tails writes newspapers, that's true. Nonetheless, I do like, there's some pretty good lines from Sonic in this that just got me for some reason. When Tails comes to be like, oh no, Sally, what's going on? Then Sonic just responds with, 2 live creatures. I am not programmed for this. And then just runs away. Like, that is ridiculous and I love it.
It makes Tails feel like a hero, and that part of it I kind of like, is that they're just being nice to Tails instead of like being weirdly abusive. We're not at Sonic the Comic yet. Yeah, but
oh no.
Oh God,
Sonic,
I don't like the way that sounds.
Sonic infiltrates Robotropolis, and
Sonic's just sitting in Robotnik's desk.
I don't know what he's doing. He's like vetoing bills or something.
Hey, he's doing God's work.
Yeah.
I had no idea Sonic was a notary.
And once again, when they're like, what? How did Sonic become roboticized? He's like, I fell into one of Master's robot makers, cleverly disguised as a robot maker.
Well, and so Robotnik asks him, tell me the location of Knothole, and Sonic's, trying to figure out a reason not to. And it's like, is that how roboticization works? I thought they couldn't access the non-roboticized memories.
I mean, roboticization seems kind of
oh no, it's not consistent.
Already, it's pretty inconsistent.
What I think would be a good joke is if Sonic, is if he asked where Knothole Village was, which I guess it is a village, I don't know. And Sonic just said, "Oh, it's in the Great Forest."
you know full well what Robotnik would do would just be to go and cut down every tree.
Well, but he knows where the Great Forest is. He does try to do that. He just isn't able to because they stop him. But it's not like he has an address.
Yeah, it's just a hole in the ground, basically.
Okay, except when they send and receive letters from there, but that's a different continuity mistake.
Oh, good.
Well, remember later he asked him to put in the coordinates for the missile strike.
True, he does.
That makes more
sense.
That's
fair. How does Sonic know where the coordinates are innately?
He's a robot. He's got a computer mind now.
Oh, the fake robot has working cybernetics.
Yes, it's the face. Come on.
It's Spade Slick all over again. It's perfect.
Anyway, so we kind of jumped past it, but when you were talking about remembering stuff when you're roboticized, that may not be consistent throughout the entire thing, and that definitely is the impression I got from Side AM. However, I did look ahead to a later thing where Sonic gets actually gotten, and that's immediately what Robotnik does, and he remembers. So it seems consistent with how the comic treats it.
Huh.
I suppose. And I will say, roboticized people in the comics, no matter what level of autonomy they have, do have more personalities than they do in the shows. So that is true.
Interesting.
But Sonic finds an excuse to not tell them Knothole, and he meets up with Sally and Antoine, who are just, I guess, hanging around, trying to figure out what's going on, I suppose. But, they kind of commiserate. And he finds Uncle Chuck just building crab meats.
Uh-huh.
And you're right, it is assembly line.
It is weird, because Sonic's supposed to be a robot Sonic, but he's got the metal jaw, but Chuck's got the same swirly eyes, but he's not a robot, but Mutsky is a robot, so I don't know how the hell that works.
Yeah, and they're both in the same place right there, so it's right in your face. Everything is there, and I don't get it.
It's like they realized they screwed up, but weren't sure how to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
I would have just made him a robot.
Honestly, yeah.
That's kind of what I thought they were going to do.
That also just kind of works better for making the stakes more interesting.
Yeah. Because hypnosis is, you can undo that in fiction.
Yeah, you can break
it's just
that.
a fact of fiction.
Roboticization, at the moment at least, they don't know how to undo that.
But yeah, Sonic gets chased out of there by Mutsky and has to kind of run back to Robotnik's place. I do like his line, where he's like, "What was the problem, Sonic?" And he says, "Uncle Chuck attempted to take an unauthorized coffee break."
Sounds like working in an Amazon warehouse.
Ah, you stole my bit.
Shopping on Amazon.
And yeah, so of course he says, point the missile at Knothole and blow it to bits, and so Sonic just points it at Robotnik's own factory.
Yep.
Should have
And
pointed it at the factory Uncle Chuck was in.
I'll tell you what.
What?
Oh yeah, just kill my uncle. That makes sense.
No.
That's my actual question. I suppose that would be the reason that he wouldn't just point it at where Robotnik is right now
Sure,
and then just
yeah.
run away.
Yeah.
Is because too
Is
close.
Chuck and Robotnik in the same factory? No, that's not true. Well, maybe it's true.
No, but they're close by.
They're close.
Which, I hope that factory that Sonic blew up didn't have any other roboticized people working there.
It actually had, it had all the important people in it.
Oh no.
Everybody's parents are there. There's Mina's mom.
The entire
there's,
government is there.
There's General de Colette. They're all dead now. But yeah, no, that's it. The Sonic clamps the robot jaw onto Robotnik's ass and runs away.
The day is saved, yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is the end of the original Sonic miniseries.
I mean, it wasn't bad.
As a test pilot for a Western Sonic comic, I would say that most of the ideas that they came up with were not particularly objectionable.
Yeah, there's nothing awful about it.
Which I guess is a bit of a backhanded compliment. I think that in general, Scott Shaw especially, his art is pretty good because he manages to make the Mohawk Sonic look okay.
Yeah.
Which is a difficult thing to do, because you can see Dave Monach messing it up in these other two issues. But it's weird. There's fun to be had, but even without straying too far from Sad AM, because I would say that they stray from Sad AM in terms of tone, but it's not like anything that specifically happens couldn't happen in Sad AM, if that makes sense. Because, like, Sonic disguising himself as a robot Sonic and sneaking into Robotropolis, you could make a Sad AM episode about that. It would just not feel like this one.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Same goes with searching for gemstones, or, having to fight robots underwater, or, having a boot to scan the roboticized. I don't know. And I mean, the backstory of Robotropolis, they did do that as an episode.
Right.
The main exception would be the whole what if thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose at least the fact that it's not real means that it's thankfully not canon, because the idea of Sonic and Robotnik being kids together, it already doesn't make sense because Robotnik's like in his 50s.
Right.
But, even if somehow Robotnik was, 15 years old and looking like that, I wouldn't want that to be the backstory. I like to think of Robotnik as a foreign element that Sonic and company have to deal with, not something intrinsic to the world they already lived in.
Right.
But yeah, so that's our start on the Archie comics. We got closing thoughts?
I'm looking forward to talking about more of it.
It will be fun to see how it evolves, for sure, because it's not all at once, and I think it's going to catch me off guard, because for the moment, it's nothing inoffensive. It's fine. It's fun. I enjoyed it.
It's just not anything amazing.
Yeah, nothing
But
too
somehow-
special so far. And that's,
Yeah,
either
somehow,
definition
yeah.
of special.
And yet, it will somehow go off the rails, and it'll be interesting.
And we will see those rails start to form next week when we talk about the first, what do you think, 5 comics? 4?
4 or 5, probably.
Something like that.
But on that note, we are going to be done for tonight, I think. Feel free to share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can always reach us at deepdivezonepod@gmail.com or at deepdivezone on Twitter. Have a great night, and we'll see y'all next week.